that I listened to it. Sounds a little echoey. Not echoey, but a little, I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't sound like it normally does.
Really? Okay. Interesting. All right. Hello, everybody. We're here. We're talking about my mic. How do I sound to everybody? Everything okay? All right. Want to welcome everybody that's here already. We have the Drewster. Of course. Good to see you, Drew. George. Doc. Who else is here? We have Raymond. Land of Ice and Snow is also here. And who else? Chuck. Hey, Chuck. And Peter. Welcome to the show. And speaking of the show, this is Two Old Bloggers, where we are your two old bloggers. We've been doing this publicly for over 25 years apiece. That is commenting and writing on your Minnesota Vikings. So, with that said, we have a show today. And the show today is a full one. We're going to start off talking about TJ Hawkinson. What a great tight end he is. And then we're going to This Week in Vikings Land, and there is a ton of stuff that falls into that. Followed by our first of our position reviews. This one is the quarterbacks. All next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock! Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. And here we are once again. Hey, Darren, how are things in the Great White North?
Pretty good, Dave. Not bad at all. Hope things are going well with you in Texas, and been a busy week in the NFL, particularly on coaches, like coaches hiring and coaches extensions, and man.
And we'll get into that.
Mm-hmm.
So, it is another beautiful day. Well, not quite. It's cloudy and blech outside, but it's at least warm or warmish. But time to talk about Theme 1. And in this theme, what the Hawk?
Yeah, Dave, I wanted to get to talk about TJ Hawkinson and his impact on the Vikings offense, or at least in my opinion, what seemed more of a muted impact this year than I thought. We remember in the offseason, even with the uncertainty about what kind of quarterback play the Vikings were going to get, whether it was J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold. But we did know that Justin Jefferson had signed the big extension, so he was in the fold, and you know what he can do all the time. Jordan Addison was in his second year with the team after a very strong rookie season, and the Vikings also picked up Aaron Jones to improve the run game. So a lot of Vikings fans, myself included, you were really feeling that this team had some really key offensive weapons, some real good offensive weapons that could make this offense, we thought, pretty explosive and pretty damn good in 2024. And that was considering that we knew that TJ Hawkinson was not going to start the season playing. He was going to be probably sit out, 5 or 6 games. We weren't sure how many, but when we did get him back, whoa, like we were thinking, man, when TJ Hawkins gets back with the weapons we already have, like where could this offense go? We might see it go to levels that we have not seen in a long time, 2009, 1998, that sort of stuff. And so Hawkinson did come back. He did play. He missed, I think, 7 weeks, he missed 7 games, played 10. But I felt that when he did come back, his impact on the Vikings offense wasn't quite as impactful as I expected it to be. And you look at the 10 games he played, the stats: 41 catches, 455 yards, no touchdown catches for Hawkinson. You take that over a full 17-game season, it works out to 70 catches, about 774 yards, and which wouldn't come close to matching what he did in 1993 with the Vikings, when he had, in 15 games, missed 2 because of the knee injury. Well, 2 plus really games with the knee injury. That dirty bastard Kirby Joseph laid on him. but even missing those 2+ games, he had 95 catches, 960 yards, set a Vikings single season record for most catches by tight end, and he would have set the single season record for most receiving yards by tight end, I'm pretty sure, if he'd gotten the other 2 games in. 5 touchdown catches in that amount. So pretty fat production. He'd emerged as one of the top 1 or 2 or 3 pass receiving tight ends in the NFL. But again, that production this year did not match what we saw last year. And you look at his completion, or his catch percentage, that went down as well. In 2023, he caught 74.8% of the balls thrown his way. 2024, quite a noticeable drop, 66.1% of the balls that came his way he caught. His targets were down too. He'd been targeted on average 8.5 targets per game in 2023. In 2024, just 6.2 targets per game average. And if you look at, in 7 of the 10 games he played, he was targeted 6 times or less in 2024. If you look at 2023, there was only 3 of the 15 games he played where he was targeted 6 times or less. And in 4 of those 15 games, he was targeted 10 times or more. So a lot more usage by TJ Hawkinson than last year. Now, even with that, the Vikings offense, it performed, I think fairly well. They were 9th in points in the points scored in the league. They averaged 25.4 points per game this season, which is the most that the Vikings offense has averaged since Kevin O'Connell's been head coach. So it was an explosive offense. There was a lot of good things there, but Hawkinson really wasn't as big a part of that offense as I thought he was going to be. And the question becomes, why was that the case? One thing I heard was that maybe it was an injury. He wasn't quite fully recovered from the knee injury, the ACL and the MCL he tore several months ago. Okay, maybe, but Dave, if you look at the Vikings training staff with Terrell Williams and his team since they joined along with Kevin O'Connell in 2022, I feel like they are very, very conservative in how they treat the players, and they sometimes keep them out maybe a little bit longer than we expect. And I think it's their track record, anecdotally from my view, is that they do not put players out there until they're 100% certain that they're ready to go full throttle. So I don't think was he fully recovered from injury, and that may have impacted his performance this year. I don't think that is credible. I think one reason that it did go down is a pretty obvious one, in that last year, Justin Jefferson missed 7 games with a hamstring injury. And so when he was gone for 7 games, somebody was, or 2 or 3 players were going to have to pick up that slack in production and passes coming their way. And Hawkinson was obviously going to be one of the guys that benefited from that and was going to get targeted more. And he did. In the 5 games, he played at the beginning of 2023 season, Dave, with Jefferson, he averaged 7.8 targets per game. The 7 that Justin Jefferson was out, that jumped up 2 more per game. He was average targets were 9.8 per game. So 2 more doesn't sound like a lot, but that does gave him more opportunities, and I think led to him being used more than he was this year. And I think another reason for why Hawkinson, I don't think, got used as much this year as last year's, I don't think that he had the rapport and connection and chemistry that he had with Sam Darnold that he had the previous 2 years with Kirk Cousins. Remember, he didn't get to work because Hawk was off to the side and not really doing football activities for a good portion of the offseason. Darnold, when he came in, didn't get to really work with Hawkinson in OTAs, didn't get to work with him and throw it in a training camp and in a full offense, didn't even really get to do that at the beginning of the season. And so I don't think that Darnold was comfortable and looked to Hawkinson as much as Kirko did in the previous 2 years. So again, I think that impacted the usage and also the way the offense evolved with Sam Darnold as quarterback compared to Kirk Cousins. With Darnold down there, we know that Darnold was looking to push the ball down the field a lot, hunting offensive plays, throwing the ball much deeper, much deeper depth of target than Kirko did. And so if that's the case, well, Hawkinson probably isn't going to be the beneficiary of that. Guys like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are. So I think those are all reasons why Hawkinson didn't have the usage and his numbers weren't as big as we expected compared to 2023 or even 2022 when he came over from Detroit. I guess the question is, we talked about the Vikings offensive numbers, their points per game. Did the fact that Hawkinson wasn't used as much, did that hurt the Vikings offense at all? And I feel that you could maybe make an argument for that. But again, points per game, we scored more than we have in the three seasons that Kevin O'Connell has been the head coach. We talked about all season. We saw it in most of the games where the Vikings were a team that really benefited from pushing the ball downfield. They consistently completed in the passing game a lot of long throws, deep throws, or they got pass interference penalties called on some of those that didn't get completed. They did this consistently. It was very successful for them. So I think if you compare the previous 2 years, how the offense worked, I don't think you could say that Hawkinson not being involved as much really hurt the Vikings offense on the surface. But having said that, Dave, I think Hawkinson and also just looking back at his numbers again, if you took a full season of what he projected a full season with his numbers he had this year, the 70 catches, the well over almost 800 yards, that would have ranked sixth in TD and pass catches by tight end and receiving yardage by tight end, which means that Hawkinson would have still had a pretty good year. He wouldn't have had a bad year, but just not what we'd seen in 2023. But I still think that the Vikings have to figure out, and this is going to be on Kevin O'Connell and Wes Phillips, they have to figure out a way to use Hawkinson, maximize his touches and maximize the talent that he is, because I think if you're looking at in the future, hopefully Justin Jefferson will be again healthy for a full 17 games next year. And, so he's going to get a lion's share of the targets just like he did last year, because he's what the passing offense, the whole offense orbits around. Jordan Addison is going to be, still going to command a fair share of targets himself. So with those two guys coming in and perhaps another running, if Aaron Jones gets back, he's going to be targeted on screens or screen passes as well. I don't think that we can expect that Hawkinson is going to get targeted as much as, say, a Travis Kelce does in Kansas City, or a Trey McBride gets targeted in Arizona this year, or Brock Bowers got targeted this year in Las Vegas, because those guys do not have an alpha wide receiver that their quarterbacks can look to right now. They don't have a guy like Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison to throw to. The Vikings do. So I think going forward in 2025 and in 2026, the numbers that Hawkinson would have put up this year over a full 17 games, that might be the norm for him in the future. And that's okay, as long as you can get more out of those touches and make those touches that he gets as productive as possible. I think it's unacceptable, for instance, that Hawkinson had no touchdown catches until the wild card game when the game was out of reach. Because you look at, with teams selling out to stop Justin Jefferson down in the red zone, Dave, like they do, and them also having to pay a lot of attention to Jordan Addison, you got to make teams pay for putting that amount of attention on those two guys. And TJ Hawkinson should be the guy who should benefit from that attention. He's got to be a factor down there in the red zone. And this year, it didn't seem like he was. The 0 touchdown catches, show that. So that's something, again, Kevin O'Connell, Wes Phillips have to figure out how to make the touches that TJ Hawkinson does get in 2025 and beyond as productive as possible. So the offense rolls, even if Hawkinson isn't catching 100 passes a year and is 1,200 yards, the kind of Travis Kelce numbers that we've seen. And this year, the type of production that you got from TJ Hawkinson, he was $7 million at the salary cap was his salary cap hit, which was 2.7% of the Vikings salary cap was allocated to him. Well, that's going up in the next 3 years. Next year, Hawkinson's going to be 16.7 million on the Vikings salary cap hit. I think that's around 6%. And then in 2026 and 2027, it goes up over 20 million. And when your salary cap gets up like that, people expect more. They expect you to be, and what passes you get, they expect you to do a lot with them, catch touchdown passes, catch a lot of first downs. So there's going to be a lot of scrutiny, and the Vikings are going to, inside the organization and outside the organization, the Vikings are going to be like, hey, we're paying this guy a lot of money. His numbers are pretty good, but are they matching what he's getting paid, what a salary cap hit is? So I think something the Vikings, again, Kevin O'Connell, Wes Phillips, they're really going to have to, this is going to be a challenge for them in 2025. If they can't get more targets to TJ Hawkinson, he doesn't warrant that because of everybody else you got in the offense. How can you make those touches again be as beneficial to the offense and as impactful to the offense as possible? And when you have a tight end who didn't catch a touchdown pass this season in 10 games, I'd say you got to get more impact than that.
Agreed. And you ask how? The answer is JJ McCarthy.
That is true, because McCarthy, you would expect, if he is your starter next year as a rookie, or basically a rookie, a second-year player, but in his first year as a starter, he's going to be looking for that security blanket in the short to intermediate area, and TJ Hawkinson would be that security blanket.
And I do believe it is Sam Darnold, for as good a quarterback as he was this year, and he was a good quarterback, especially deep. Yes. I mean, he balled out deep. And if you look at the numbers, it freaking rocked. But Sam had problem in intermediate range. Where does a tight end normally run? In the intermediate range.
Yeah.
It's I think it comes down to that. That and the fact that Sam did not work with TJ early in the season because TJ was still healing. And the chemistry was never developed and such. That's just, I think it's going to change next year because we're going to have a different quarterback and a quarterback that throws intermediate and long. But I think this year we had to throw long because that's what Sam did well. And he did it well. Got to give him that. And we scored a lot of points with it. But I think next year the offense will be more balanced, both run and pass, but also pass between shorts, intermediates, and long range. When you look at Sam's statistics, his short, inside 10 yards, intermediate, 10 to 20. There was only a 3-yard or less than 3-yard difference in yards per catch.
Mm-hmm.
We would think going up 10 yards, there would be almost 10 more.
Yeah.
No, there wasn't. It was just 3. Whereas going to 20 and beyond, it was over 10 more. It was a huge jump. So I think that's partially what was to blame. Now, his knee, there's always the first part when you get back from a major injury as to how's it feel? Is it still in my head? Until I get, a normal hit and can trust it, there's that. And then I think there's the first year after is okay. The second year after, you're back to your normal self and you're balling out. And next year will be the second year after, and he will ball out. Now, as for his pay, that's how they set it up so they could remember when he was signed and traded for, we still had Kirk Cousins, and we had to pay all that money. So they had to move some money forward to make room to get personnel and to pay for Kirk Cousins, even if we didn't have him last year, and all that sort of stuff. Now, all that's coming home to roost this year and next when it jumps even further, but we can extend him at that point if we wish, if he bounces back and gets to his normal self. So I think TJ Hawkinson's going to be fine. Was he a disappointment this year overall? Yes. But I don't blame it all on him, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and you're right. And I did forget to mention that certainly, even though his salary cap is scheduled to go up, over the 20 million mark in 2026 and 2027, you can be sure that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is going to go to him and look to restructure. I think in some way, sure, move some money forward and signing bonuses and that sort of thing, and push that cap hit out like they've done with so many players, like most teams do. So, right. Yeah, I think TJ Hawkins is going to be all right, but pass catching is what he makes his money on. He's not a really great run blocker, in my opinion, and he's not like George Kittle.
He's a pass catcher.
Yeah,
a run blocker is number 84.
Yes. So if you're not maximizing his talents in that area, you're doing him and the Vikings offense a disservice, and you're paying a guy a lot of money and not making the most, making the most use out of that.
Right. And Biggs got it right when he said rookies count on their tight ends. Yes, they do. And Drew says, to explain McCarthy, just go look at the TD pass versus Nebraska 2023. Scrambles left out of the pocket, throws back against the grain, hits Roman Wilson running along the back of the end zone. Badass. And that will probably happen with TJ Hawkinson next year.
Drew, taking specific plays from a college game 2 years ago. Yes. You can tell this guy watches a lot of Michigan football.
He does. But the only team to beat the national champs this year. Anyways, it is what it is. I think TJ is going to be fine next year. Yes, this year was a disappointment, but I think partially had nothing to do with him. So it is what it is. All right. Yeah. Now on to theme 2. This week in Vikings land.
There you go, Dave. There's the deep voice we're talking about. Could need that John Facenda NFL Films voice for this sort of thing, I think. Yeah.
This one, we're starting off with some update on Khyree Jackson. We got it this week that Khyree Jackson's, the young lady that hit him, was indicted on 13 counts, including vehicle manslaughter related to driving under the influence in Prince George County outside of D.C. She now could face, especially with the death of the 3 players, Khyree included, up to 30 years in prison. And that's your first update.
Yeah, and when this came out, I haven't followed the, partly because I was so disappointed with this tragic incident when it happened. I just didn't want to really think about it, but I hadn't been following the legal proceedings on it. So this was an update, pretty important one in this case. Like you said, it sounded like that the driver veered into another lane quite suddenly at high speeds, which led to the crash. And you can see the video, the pictures there, and there was video at the time. The Khyree Jackson's car was obliterated.
Very much he was riding in,
yeah. Not much left to it. There's no way I think anybody was going to come out of that one surviving, and tragically he passed away. And then the woman who, and the passengers who hit Jackson, they were uninjured. So
that's normal.
Yeah. So I mean, this is something where the legal proceedings, it's we'll hope that, depending on innocent until proven guilty, of course, but that Khyree Jackson and the other two, the families of the other two passengers that passed away, that they get the justice that they deserve. It does point to, selfishly on my part, is like this also reminded me that on the Vikings roster, we've got 3 starting corners and the top backup who are set to be free agents, and it just brings home again, and only 2 cornerbacks under contract. One of them, Mekhi Blackman, coming off a major knee injury, and then the other being Dwight McLaughlin, who was an undrafted rookie free agent who didn't really play much. We don't know how Khyree Jackson would have gone, how his rookie season would have gone, how much he would have played, how well he would have played, but it sure would been nice to have him under contract and being ready to compete for a roster for playing time in 2025 with all of the free agent decisions and free agents we have, particularly on the defensive side of the ball.
And our full defensive staff tutoring him. And
yep. And so it's a tragic thing that happened, and all of that, but it also left a big hole in the Vikings roster, I think, potentially, and we'll never know what Khyree Jackson could have.
And it cost us a draft pick.
Yes, and should have never happened.
Right. So Sarah says she hopes Addison's staying out of trouble. Don't we all, Sarah? Don't we all? All right, the next topic. Somebody got extended.
They did. That didn't take long, did it, Dave? Last week, we were talking about this, and for the 2 weeks prior, lots of noise about Kevin O'Connell. Where is he going to be? Is he he's upset that he didn't get extended last year, blah, 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 blah. Well, on Wednesday, the news came down. He got an extension. Still haven't seen the terms. Still haven't seen the amount of years. Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network did say, though, that when he was talking to Ben Lieber this week, that the Wilfs made it well worth Kevin O'Connell's while to sign his name on the dotted line. And I think there's some speculation out there that O'Connell might be up in the $14 million a year range, 14, 15 million a year range. And like you were talking about last week, he may have also is getting more control or say in the personnel side of things as part of this deal. We'll see about that. We won't actually know too much about that, perhaps. I don't care about the money. Again, like I said, it doesn't go against the salary cap. So it's, what the Wilfs and the other Vikings owners, minority owners, that's their money. They did with it what they chose. I am more interested in the amount of years that Kevin O'Connell got extended. And like Big Rail Dad said last week, does the extension go to basically to the end of J.J. McCarthy's contract, which would be his 5th-year option, which would be 2028. So did an O'Connell getting another 3 years on top of what he already had? We don't know that. We might not hear that for several weeks. Vikings are working on Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's extension too, we heard. I'd expect that you'll find out that'll get announced early next week, so that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah can get his day in the sun, just like Kevin O'Connell got his day in the sun earlier this week. I think that and this is good news, of course, particularly with Kevin O'Connell, because now he can just focus on roster building, team building in 2025. Doesn't have to worry about this contract stuff, and it's full bore. And Kwesi Adofo-Mensah will do the same. The extension does, though, I think it changes things and expectations that are going to be placed on Kevin O'Connell now, Dave. He signed that 4-year deal, first-year head coach, gets us to an NFC North divisional title in 2022 and into the playoffs. Got us back to the playoffs with a 13-win season in 2022, gets us a 14-win season this year when nobody was expecting that for the Vikings, and gets us back into the playoffs. Unfortunately, 0-2 in the playoffs so far, but that's still fine and dandy. I think all Viking fans, pretty much most Viking fans, are very happy with how the job that Kevin O'Connell's done with this team, how he's rebuilt the roster, the work he's done with quarterbacks while he's been here, the change in team culture that he's made. But and they're fine with the divisional title his first year and him getting us back to the playoffs this year with a, again, better than expected season. But now you got that big fat extension, however much it's worth. And for the Wilfs, the media and Viking fans are going to look on Kevin O'Connell, and their expectations are going to be much different now than they were before he signed the extension. Now you got the extension, buddy. Now the salary cap issues you had when you came in, when you're a rookie head coach, those are gone. Now you've got more of your guys on the Vikings, both on offense and defense. You're not saddled with the Rick Spielman, Mike Zimmer roster pretty much anymore. So now it's time to go get it. Like, people are going to be expecting you to be make the Super Bowl, at least make the Super Bowl here during the life of the extension, and probably win it. And if you don't, you're probably going to have to get there and maybe win it to get another extension. You know, that's the expectations that are going to be put on Kevin O'Connell, especially with him potentially winning NFC Coach of the Year by one set of football writers, and
right.
And maybe he'll be named
the
AP
NFL
one Coach of the Year. So you start building up that resume. Now you got to build up on it even more. And the only way for Kevin O'Connell to do that is, again, consistently get to NFC Championship games during the life of the extension, get to Super Bowls, win a Super Bowl or more. That is going to be the expectation. And if he doesn't do that, if he's just getting back to the playoffs and winning a wild card game, but not getting any further than that, he probably doesn't get a third extension, Dave. And he's probably in 2028 or 2027, he's moving his family out of Minnesota and finding work elsewhere.
Well, I think like I said last week, I think this contract's married with J.J. McCarthy through J.J.'s 5th year. So say it's a 4-year. Well, he's got one more year, so that's a 3-year addition on that. We'll see if it goes longer. But yes, now you've set a floor. He set a floor. And that floor is the winningest coach in Vikings history in 3 seasons. Okay? Now you got to improve on that. Win the NFC North consistently. Go to the playoffs consistently. Go to the NFC Championship consistently. Get us to the Super Bowl and win it. It's simple. Now the Wilfs want to be like the Steelers, like the Rooneys, and keep guys for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Rooneys got Super Bowls out of theirs.
Yes.
Mike Tomlin obviously hasn't in a while, but they did get Super Bowls out of him. And hey, I'm all for that. If he does that, if he keeps improving, ratcheting up, tutors JJ to be the next star in the NFL, and we go to the Super Bowl and win it, dude, give him a contract for life if he wants it, or whatever it is. But as of right now, he's done extremely well, better than anybody thought. You could throw that win-loss record at anybody and say, hey, you think he's going to do that well? And they would have said no. Right? It's unusual in the NFL to be that big, that quality. So I'm happy for him. I'm glad he got it, and we're going to be happy for Kwesi once Kwesi comes out, and to see if they're paired, which is a question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. True enough.
And we'll see on the power issue how much he's got, much more influence, maybe, hopefully in the draft, maybe. But we'll talk about that influence when it comes to our quarterback breakdown here in Theme 3, because Kwesi obviously didn't go with KOC last year on the Kirk Cousins when KOC wanted Kirk Cousins. Just gives you one of them moments.
Yes. And we dodged a huge bullet on that one.
Yes, we did. Kwesi made the correct call. All right. Speaking of coaches, here's our next one, Mr. Brian Flores.
Yes, this is going to be a coaching heavy this week in Vikings land, Dave. But yeah, you've got Kevin. Got lots of again mentioned at the beginning of the show. Lots of head coaching movement this week, and one guy though it looks that is not moving anywhere is our defensive coordinator Brian Flores. I love this. But we know he'd gotten an interview with the Jets, the Jaguars, and the Bears, and of course all those three teams announced their head coaches this week. With the Bears getting Ben Johnson, the Bears and the Jets raided Dan Campbell's staff to get their head coaches, and then Jaguars yesterday, after a bit of back and forth, pretty bizarre situation, but Liam Cohen ends up getting the job at the Jaguars. And then yesterday also the Cowboys announced that Brian Schottenheimer is going to be the head coach for them. So that's another head coaching position that's gone. And the first guy that got hired was Mike Vrabel for the New England Patriots, which I think was for his preferred landing spot. But he was out of the picture. And the only one that's left right now is the New Orleans Saints, who have not interviewed Brian Flores. So he doesn't look like he's in the running there, which means B-Flow will be back as our defensive coordinator in 2025. Again, love this. He's still got some things to fix. He hasn't been able to fix everything with the Vikings defense. They still continue. He's still got to figure out why you can stop an offense for 3 quarters or most of 3 quarters, but then in the final 12 minutes of the game, somehow teams are able to move the ball on our defense 2 or 3 minutes and score multiple touchdowns, that sort of thing. And the late season where it feels like the defense has not played as well late in the season as they did early in the season. Those are some things he's got to figure out what the issues are there. But still, the job he has done, mentioned it last week, turning one of the worst defenses in the NFL into one of the best in the 2 years he's been a defensive coordinator, that cannot be disputed, denied. He's done a great job both on the X's and O's and in identifying talent to come in that fits his system and will play well in that system. So, hey, Brian Flores back for year 3 as defensive coordinator for the Vikings. Hell yes. And hey, the Vikings have a lot of work to do on the defensive side of the ball, Dave. We'll get into this over the next few weeks. Lots of free agents that we've got to decide. Are we going to retain? Are we going to let them walk? Are we going to assign to extensions? But I think Flores, a third year with this defense, when you couple the talent that the Vikings have brought in the past couple of years and give him some more ammo, some more defensive weapons in 2025, really, really excited to see where he's going to take this defense when that happens next season.
I agree wholeheartedly. He's done more with less, with the whole Khyree Jackson. Oh my God, we got to scramble from that. We lost Blackman, got to, scramble from that. And to pick, the old guys off the street corners and plant them in and have them play well. And the whole scheming thing, because he wanted to, mess with quarterbacks' heads and such. I think it's brilliant. And now somebody mentioned pay, that he gets paid very well. He does. It was mentioned, I think Doogie mentioned it earlier today. He is being reportedly paid as basically a head coach. Mm-hmm. Now, that's prior to KOC's extension, but he's making significant amount of money, and he is going to stay because Dallas isn't going to, or the Saints aren't going to hire him. He's not even on the list. So I think it was a great move this week with all those coaching hires because we get to keep the band together.
We do.
Unlike our next topic, Ben Johnson to the Bears.
Yes. Well, Vikings fans got their wish this week, sort of. Ben Johnson is no longer going to be offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, and he has been a thorn in our side the 3 years he has been offensive coordinator over there. The bad news is that he didn't leave the NFC North division because he took the Bears job. I'm not too fussed about his move to Chicago, though, Dave, because one, we've seen it many times. We'll find out eventually, but there's no guarantee that a great coordinator is going to make a great head coach. Can Ben Johnson be a leader of men and a guy who's a CEO of a football team as opposed to just being a great coordinator? Time will tell. A lot of times it doesn't work out for that offensive coordinator, and he is missing a few key ingredients in Chicago that he had in Detroit. One, a dominant offensive line. He doesn't have that in Chicago. He had it in Detroit, and that's a big reason why Detroit was able to do what they did, particularly over the last 2 seasons. They had an offensive line that could just mash you in the run game and protect the quarterback and an immobile quarterback too quite quite nicely.
Yes, as we know.
Yes. 2, they don't have a dynamic running duo like the Lions have in Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. And 3, they don't have Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. DJ Moore is a nice player. Rome Odunze could be a nice player, but they're not Amon-Ra St. Brown. So Ben Johnson's got a lot of work to do in Detroit to get them, in Chicago to get them to where they're going to be a factor in the NFC North. And it's a bit of a rebuilding process. He does have Caleb Williams, but after that, it's not so much again, a lot of work to do, quite a few holes to fill, particularly on the offensive line. Thanks to everybody who's commenting. Again, fuzzy bandwidth here. I cannot really make out what people are saying. Drew had something about an A+ grade, and Sarah's making lots of comments. But anyway, so Ben Johnson's not. He's got some stuff to do, a lot of work to do in Chicago. I do think, though, that with him gone in Detroit and Aaron Glenn taking the Jets job and not being the defensive coordinator in Detroit, that this is going to hurt the Detroit Lions. Yes, they still have a lot of talent on offense and defense, and they're going to be a very good team in 2025. I'm not saying that, but coordinators, really good ones, matter. And I think that if with Johnson gone and Glenn gone, there's no guarantee the coordinators that are going to replace them in Detroit are going to be able to get the same production or better that on offense and defense that Johnson and Glenn got, particularly this year, from those units. And if they can't do that, then Detroit is not going to be as strong and have the kind of year they had this year. And that's good news for the Vikings and everybody else in the NFC North. You remember 1998, Dave, we all do, after Billick left and took the Baltimore Ravens job. The Vikings returned almost the entire offense intact. But did they perform the same, particularly early in the year? No, they did not. And Randall Cunningham really suffered not having Brian Billick as his offensive coordinator. And eventually he lost his starting job because he sucked with the new offensive coordinator. So, big movements there by Detroit, and I think it's going to have a pretty significant impact on Detroit's fortunes in the next couple of years. Again, they're still going to be a factor. They're still going to be a very strong team. They just got the talent where unless they get knocked with a huge bunch of injuries, both on offense and defense, there's no way I can see how they won't still be a very good team. But as good as they were this year without those 2 coordinators, I don't know about that.
Well, there is questions. Now, they should be fine next year, but it's after that 2026 where the salary cap issues become a problem with them. But normally you'd think, all right, I lose my coordinators, I'd hire from within. Well, there's a problem with that. Not only did they lose Johnson and Glenn, they lost much, much more. The whole staff is exiting. You have to include defensive line coach Terrell Williams, who's becoming the Patriots' defensive coordinator, offensive line coach Hank Fraley, who's going to the Bears to become the OC, QB coach Mark Brunell, likely to the Jets, Antron Randall L. and J.T. Barrett to the Bears as assistant head coach, wide receivers, and QB coach, respectively. And their entire training staff is going to the Bears.
Whew. That's a lot of turnover, Dave.
That's a ton of turnover, a ton of coaches. Who do you have left? The quality assurance guys? It's not much. Detroit it's going to be interesting this year. And it makes me wonder, when there's this big of an exodus of all this staff, we can understand the coordinators going because they're getting promotions and such. But to take half the staff with them or better, and Detroit's letting them, it makes you go, I wonder if there's something brewing behind the scenes that we don't know about yet, that people want out.
Good point.
It's
Just
just a question.
Dave, you and I love us some dysfunction on the other NFC North teams. That's for
yes,
sure.
we do. And I love some conspiracy. And I even asked the guys on the NFC North Roundup show who will be king. I even asked, and Foster said he agrees with me that there may be something up. So we'll have to find out. But I thought it was awful interesting when I started looking up and finding all those coaches and staff leaving. And to take the entire training staff? Really?
Yeah.
That's okay. But that's what's reported. So, all right, our next issue, and this one's close and near and dear to Drewster's heart. Dallas Turner.
Yeah, we've talked about Dallas Turner several times on the show since he got drafted. That usually happens when you're the 17th overall pick in the NFL draft. You're going to get talked about a lot, and you're going to be a very visible player. Now that the 2025 season is over, though, you take stock of how players did, and I think it's fair to say that Dallas Turner's rookie season in 2025, he was a disappointment. He had trouble getting on the field, and he wasn't very noticeable when he was on the field a lot of times. And yes, the Vikings, Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard were fantastic this year as edge rushers. And so they played a lot of snaps. It was difficult to justify taking them off the field. But Turner did have an opportunity to carve out a bigger role on this team because you had Patrick Jones, the second or third or whatever it is. I think that guy was a guy that was ripe for the picking to take snaps from, and Turner couldn't do it. So, that's concerning to me. And if you look at, and then you start comparing Turner with the guys that were drafted around the same time as him. And last year's draft, the 4 top edge rushers in the college draft, they all got drafted within 5 or 6 or 7 picks of each other. Latu went to the Colts at 15. Then Turner went at 17 to the Vikes. Then Jared Verse went to the Rams, of course, at 19. And then the final top edge rusher, Chop Robinson from Penn State, he goes to Miami Dolphins at 21 overall. Well, if you look at all those guys and how they performed in the rookie year, I didn't get to watch them a lot. Saw Verse more than the other guys for sure. But if you look at stats and PFF grades, well, Turner was outperformed by all 3 of them, unfortunately. You start with Latu first, who was probably the least productive outside of Turner, but he had 4 sacks this season, so a little bit more than Turner. 71.5 Pro Football Focus grade, 618 defensive snaps, 38 pressures. Now Turner's numbers, I forgot to mention that he had 3 sacks, 1 interception in the Seattle game that we remember. Only a pretty average or below average 63.9 Pro Football Focus grade. Only 12 pressures, defensive pressures, which ranked him 111th out of 211 edge rushers that they graded. And he only had 302 defensive snaps. Only played 8 defensive snaps in the wild card loss against Los Angeles 2 weeks ago, Dave. So you heard Latu's numbers. Now, Chop Robinson, 20th overall pick, 21st overall pick, 6 sacks. He had a 70 Pro Football Focus grade, 565 defensive snaps, 56 pressures. So was 19th, even though he didn't get a ton of sacks, a lot of pressures. That was 19th out of 211 edge rushers that they graded. Not bad at all, especially considering he had only had 565 defensive snaps. Finally, Jared Verse. I think most of us are well versed in how he has been playing recently. In the regular season, only 4.5 sacks, but his PFF grade was humongous, 86.2. That was 9th out of the 211 edge rushers they graded. 833 defensive snaps. So he played a ton of defensive snaps this year. He was a starter for the Rams, and 77 defensive pressures, fourth out of 211 edge rushers. So outdistanced Turner by a country mile. So those are the numbers. Now, all is not lost with Dallas Turner. We know, everybody agrees he's got loads of talent. That is not the question. That has never been the question. He was also, when you talk about Latu and Verse, they are 2 years and a couple of months older than Turner. So Turner is only 21 this whole season. That 2 years can make a big difference, particularly on the physical side of things, as to you being able to dominate and make an impact at the NFL level when you're playing grown-ass men who are 25, 26, 27, 28 or older and have been in an NFL weightlifting program and strength program for years and years and years. So Turner's got to grow into his body. He's going to grow into his body. He's going to thicken out. He's going to fill out more, I think, and improve, I think, strength-wise. So there's that. But still, when you look at him being outperformed by those other three guys and the lack of the trouble getting on the field a lot of times this year, he's really, really, really got to step it up in 2025, Dave, because if he does not, then I think that's going to be a huge red flag, and we could be looking at yet another draft bust from Kwesi Adofo-Mensah.
I don't think we're going to get a draft bust. Not at all. I think it was, we're going to draft him and have him ready, especially if one of these guys we pull off free agency doesn't pan out. You got to remember that Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel both made the Pro Bowl. They had outstanding seasons. He was drafted to take one of these two guys' spot. Thankfully, they stayed healthy. And so he didn't get a whole lot of play. And they took it slow. And he had 3 sacks for that minuscule 300 and some odd pass rushes.
Defensive snaps, yeah.
So, which was more than most everybody if you break it down by percentage. And he's good in pass coverage. They're teaching him to do that. And you got to, when you compare these other guys, they were, either playing pure edge, which is just go kill the quarterback, no matter what. Kill the quarterback. That's your first priority. Kill the quarterback. After that, stop the run on the way by, whatever. His responsibility, because of the defense, the 3-4 style of the defense, was much different. And they wanted to use his speed to cover pass routes. And it worked. For the most part, it worked. Now, in the beginning of the season, I understand Patrick Jones had the best season of his career in the beginning of the season, and it shocked us all.
Yeah.
I didn't think he was going to do that. We call him Mr. Cleanup for a reason. But I think even next year, I think he's going to be the number 3 guy, basically. And I think his numbers are going to go up, and he's going to get more and more improved. But he's still not going to be, quote, a starter because you got Van Ginkel and you got Grenard.
Health permitting. And we do hope they're as healthy next year as they were this year.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly. And yes, Niner, hey, Beto, usually 3 years is what we give a draft before we call them busts. And we're going to be talking about quarterbacks here in a bit. So hold on. And it's just, I think it's much to do about a whole lot of nothing. Because I think the kid was good. I think he's exactly where we expect him to be. And he's young. And he's going to grow bigger, stronger. And he's fast. We already know that. He flashed quite a few times. And I think that's going to get nothing but better and better. Get a full offseason in him, and he's going to freaking rock. So I'm not worried about this one little bit. And
That's
then
good,
here
Dave.
after 26, one of those guys, I believe, contract's up. So he'll be ready to step in.
Yeah,
Right
it's
after that,
Van Ginkel.
Grenard's got a 3.
Yeah. Van Ginkel's the guy that only signed a 2-year deal, and he's 29 now, would be 30 at some point in 2025. So getting up there, a little bit long in the tooth for a football player. So yeah, don't know if the Vikings would look at extending Gink beyond what his contract is right now, especially if Turner develops like Dave, you're expecting him to.
Mm-hmm. But when both those guys are making the Pro Bowl, and was it Gink that's the second team All-Pro? They had great seasons.
Yes.
It is what it
great
is.
Seasons, and you could not really afford to take him off the field.
Right. Now, hopefully we get as fat in the corner room as we are at the edge room, but we'll see. Anyways, now on to theme 3. Quarterbacks. We're starting our annual position review, and we're doing it with quarterbacks.
Because that's what everybody loves to talk about, right, Dave? Nothing like
absolutely.
A good quarterback debate. Yeah. So yes, are going to start. We're starting a couple of weeks later than we did last year because the Vikings had such a good season and actually made the playoffs. But we're starting where we usually start, which is at quarterbacks, the most important position in the sport. And before the season started, Dave, this seemed like a pretty simple situation the Vikings had set up, right? They had signed Sam Darnold as the bridge guy. They had drafted J.J. McCarthy to be the quarterback of the future. So Darnold, maybe he wins the starting job right out of training camp. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he lasts. If he does, maybe he plays the full season, or maybe J.J. replaces him some point in the year. If he plays the full season, yeah, the Vikings would have meant that Darnold had played pretty well, and probably the Vikings are a 9-win team or an 8-win team or a 10-win team, somewhere on the fringe of making the playoffs, or barely making it in, or barely not making it in. And then, so it would have been simple, right? Then thank you, Sam, after 2024. Thank you for your service. Move on. J.J. McCarthy slide in as the quarterback, or starting quarterback in 2025. Well, of course, J.J. Tears his meniscus. Doesn't play the whole year. And then Sam Darnold has a Pro Bowl year, throws for 4,300 yards, 35 touchdowns. Is one of the main reasons you have a 14-3 regular season, are challenging for the number 1 seed in the NFC and the NFC North division, which nobody predicted at the beginning of the season. And so a simple decision becomes maybe not so simple because of what Darnold did. Or is it still simple? Here's how I look at it, Dave, and how I hope that the Vikings look at it is that first off, Sam Darnold, does he want to return to Minnesota? I'm pretty sure he does. I don't think it's lost on him that with the way Kevin O'Connell took him in and the coaching he got from Kevin O'Connell and the whole Vikings offensive staff and the weapons he had to work with and players he had to work with in Minnesota, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones. I don't think it's lost on Darnold that those players and that infrastructure and that coaching are a big reason why he had the year that he had and is in the position that he's in. So yeah, would you want to return to that situation? You bet. And I'm sure Darnold also knows that if he doesn't return there and sign somewhere else, that he's probably going to a situation where the players won't be as good and maybe the coaching staff won't be as good and he might not play as well, likely won't play as well as he did in Minnesota this year. Maybe a whole lot worse than he played in Minnesota this year. So you'd want to stay in a really good situation. Having said that, I don't see Darnold taking a hometown discount to stay in Minnesota if that was on the table. Like, very few players do that. And his agent and the NFLPA are not going to be very happy if he signs a deal well below what his market value could be. So I don't think the hometown discount is going to be in play for Darnold. The best thing, I think the most advantageous thing for the Vikings to do here, work out the best for them and maybe Darnold in a way, would be you franchise tag him and trade him somewhere so you can get some draft capital that we sorely need. But I'm having a hard time seeing how that happening. I don't know if Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings, they can do it, right? They're well within the rights to franchise tag him, but that doesn't seem like the kind of move that they would do. They've made tough decisions with roster in the past couple of years, Dave, in getting rid of Dalvin Cook and Adam Thielen and not re-signing Kirk Cousins and not choosing to extend Danielle Hunter and going for Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel and that. But all those situations, they didn't limit a player's ability to test the open market. So I think the franchise tagging, that's something that if Darnold, I don't know if he'd be on side with that. And if you do that just because you can, you're going to piss off the player. And that doesn't seem like that's the way KOC and Kwesi operate. That's just me.
There's some debate whether we even can. And let me explain why.
Please do.
First off, listening to Luke Braun on Locked On Vikings this week, he talked about how Sam's contract voids right before you can tag him, like the day before.
Right.
It's purposely written that way.
Mm-hmm.
So if it voids, he's a free agent. Now, also with that void language and how they do the dummy numbers, Tyler explained this on his show using Eric Eager, Dr. Eric Eager, because, and this is how Kirk Cousins had his arranged and it screws everybody, because you get that extra $30 million that's funny money that's just thrown out there as here's the extension, but it voids and we're not going to pay you and blah, 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 blah. But since that's out there, because of the CBA, it limits how much money you can offer if you want to offer the player something. And in this case, I think it's the max we could offer him is $20 million because of those void years. And he's not going to go for that.
No.
Now, the question is, can you still tag him? Now, with Kirk Cousins last year, they had it set up that it voided the day before. Well, they negotiated with Kirk and got the void date extended up until the first day of the year, right? So they had time to play. Will Sam Darnold's agent do that? We don't know.
Good question.
And then if you want to tag him, all right, that's $41 million-ish. That's a gamble. That's $41 million off of your cap right then and there. Boom, done. You cannot mess with that money. You cannot spend it as long as the player's on there and you've got the cap offered. Or you've tagged him and you've got the tag offered. You can't spend it. You can't go out and get Trey Smith and a bunch of other offensive linemen and defensive studs and all that. Now, there'll be some money, yes, obviously, but not the big chunk that we thought we could spend on 3 quality players versus Sam Darnold and maybe 1. That's if you could do that. Mm-hmm. And the question is still there, can you? So it's quite the sticky wicket, whether he wants to stay or not. It's going to be interesting how they work around the minutia in the laws and the agreements, the CBAs, the contracts, all that, to either make it happen or they're just going to let him walk.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dave, let's just say you could make it work. I still, from Darnold's side of things, I don't, as a player, if I was in Darnold's shoes, I'd be like, the franchise tag. Okay, you're telling me you're going to franchise tag me, but you don't want to keep me. You're going to try to trade me. Well, that means I don't have 100% control as a player on where I'm going to go. And you could trade me to a team that isn't as good a situation as maybe I would have picked if I'm a free agent. So I don't think Darnold.
You could trade me to Cleveland, and I don't want to go to Cleveland.
Well, yeah, you don't want to go to Cleveland, but now you're going to work out an extension, likely with Cleveland or whoever Darnold's team is, so that you're not working on a franchise tag. You're getting a multi-year deal for more money than that. But it's still it doesn't leave everything in Darnold's control and his negotiating team's control. And I don't think that's something as a player that's in his best interest. So I think there's a lot of moving parts. Even if you could do it, that makes it seem unlikely to me that it would get done. And as far as Darnold coming back to the Vikings, why would he want to do that? I know why, because it's a great situation, but you got to know that JJ McCarthy is not going anywhere. The Vikings are not trading him, so he's going to stay there. And if Darnold signs on, even with an extension for team friendly, to me, Darnold would have to know that if I have a stretch of bad games, KOC is benching me and I'm no longer the starter here. So I don't think that's a good, I don't think that's maybe it would only be 2 games, like the 2 games rough games he had against Indianapolis and Jacksonville. Maybe that's all it takes to get yanked as a starter.
Well, we were talking about it early in the season. Once, the first 6 games or so, once he stumbled, we're talking, wouldn't it be great if we brought Kevin McCarthy in? Or J.J. McCarthy, pardon me. And J.J. McCarthy. And it's just because he had stumbled. He had more than just the 2 bad games. He had a few mixed in there.
Oh, the Jets.
Jacksonville and whatever. And the team won anyways. But when you have those type of bad games, and especially since it was early, and I don't think it was the Jacksonville game, that if J.J. McCarthy was healthy, J.J. would have gone in the next week. They would have rolled it. Now, if he chooses to stay and J.J. is healthy, we expect him to put on 20 pounds-ish or better coming up this summer, but he's already throwing. He's already running. He's staying in Minnesota to train. I'm sure he's going through the VR stuff all over again, especially after we hear Jaden Daniels goes through it at 1.75 speed. That's why he's so calm. Do you think Mr. Zen here is not going to be like, if Jaden could do it, I'm going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
And they've got all the VR plays from all the practices. Now, if you're Sam Darnold, you want to go back? Yeah, hey, great. Great wide receivers, great tight end, weapons up the wazoo, great coach. But if I'm Sam Darnold, I'm moving on.
Yes.
And hopefully it's with a good team.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's the LA Raiders.
That's right.
Where you just went down and scout for houses.
One thing about, I spent a lot of time on Darnold here, but I think from the Vikings perspective, one of the reasons that you sign, like, whether you're committing franchise $41.5 million or more to a guy like Sam Darnold or any quarterback, the reason you're doing that is because you think that quarterback can make up for the other weaknesses on your team that you're not going to be able to address because you don't have the money to spend that on free agency because you're spending it on a quarterback. Well, what you saw in those 2 games against Detroit and LA, does Sam Darnold seem like the guy who can make up for the weaknesses you have on the team once teams figure that out and attack that? I would say no. And I think Brian Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell have also reached that conclusion. And that's why, as Sarah pointed out earlier, the best course of action. And what they're going to do is they're going to let Sam walk, take the comp pick, and turn things over to J.J. McCarthy in 2025. And particularly when one of the factors you had to look at, and you talked about it, Dave, about why you keep Darnold, is that you aren't sure that J.J. McCarthy's knee is sound. Well, he's throwing now. He's doing athletic things. He's running. Kevin O'Connell says he's right where he needs to be in his rehab. So it doesn't sound like the knee is an issue, and he's going to be fine in OTAs and offseason and training camp. So, hey, you turn it over. The Vikings, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell, they had a plan on the quarterback. And the first part of the plan was sign the bridge guy, draft your quarterback of the future. They did that. They hit a roadblock with the knee injury type thing, but there's no reason to deviate from that plan. Follow through on the plan. The plan is you start J.J. McCarthy in 2025. If you think he's ready, and based on what I saw in what I read through training camp and OTAs, how he played even in that short period in the first exhibition game against Las Vegas, he looked like a kid who was ready. Now, there's going to be growing pains when he gets there. They happen to all rookies, even happened to Jaden Daniels this year at times, but you got to grow. You got to live with that to some extent, because I think, again, what Sam Darnold's, is Sam Darnold, did we see the best he's ever going to be this season? And still wasn't good enough to get us a playoff win. So I think you got to move on. And J.J. McCarthy is the guy you move on to. Now, who backs him up? Well, I think it's been mentioned below. I think Daniel Jones is the guy that the Vikings are going to try to bring back. I don't know if Jones is going to go for that. I think he came to Minnesota and sat on the practice squad for 6 weeks for a reason. He had a plan in mind for himself. He wanted to see how things would work with Kevin O'Connell, and whether Kevin O'Connell is everything that he's made up to be as a quarterback guru, whisperer, whatever. We don't know how Jones feels about that. I do know that, just off the top of my head, there's 8 NFL teams right now who have big questions at quarterback, need a new quarterback next year, and Daniel Jones could potentially be an option for them. Does Jones take way less money to be a backup to J.J. McCarthy in Minnesota when he could be a starter elsewhere for Pittsburgh or the Jets or the Raiders or 3 or 4 other teams? I just don't know if he'd be willing to forego a starting job, even if it's at a franchise that's not in the best shape, and be a backup. But we'll see. But I think the Vikings are going to try to make that happen. I just don't know if they're going to be able to pull it off. If it's not Jones, is it Nick Mullins? I think the Vikings would want a guy that has more starting experience and has been more successful as a starter than Nick Mullins. I think Mullins is fine when you got an established guy like a Kirk Cousins, that what kind of production you're going to get. With a rookie, I don't know if I'd be comfortable with Nick Mullins as my backup, considering I don't really know what I'm going to get yet from J.J. McCarthy. So I think they'd be looking at somebody more experienced. Now, the free agent quarterback pool isn't that rich. Andy Dalton, the Red Rocket, he might be an option. He's 38, or he's going to be 38, but he still can play a bit, and he has accepted his role as a veteran backup mentor, but he can probably keep you afloat for a couple of games. Jimmy Garoppolo would be kind of a nice option. He's younger, 32, and he doesn't cost you, neither of those guys are going to cost you a bunch salary cap wise. I think Garoppolo's salary cap hit this year with LA was just over $3 million. The Red Rockets was about $5 million. That's way less than the $10 million you paid Darnold to be potentially your backup this year, if that had worked out. Marcus Mariota might be on the market. I don't love that, but he's a backup with starter experience. The one that'd be really funny, Dave, this would be awesome. If Kevin O'Connell wants to make his bones as the quarterback reclamation king, how about you sign Jameis Winston, the turnover machine, as your backup, and try to see, work with him. That would be like the biggest challenge Kevin O'Connell would ever have, would to turn Jameis Winston into a viable NFL quarterback who doesn't throw 30 interceptions a year. It'd be hilarious to watch. And Winston is talented. Mm-hmm. and he's accepted backup positions in New Orleans and in Cleveland the past few years, but I don't think that's going to happen. He's not the type of guy and character that Kevin O'Connell would bring in. But certainly Jimmy Garoppolo would be, Andy Dalton would be, and certainly Daniel Jones would be. Again, I just don't know if Daniels is going to go for the backup when he could be a starter. Who's going to be the number 3 guy? I think Brett Rippon gets brought back. Kevin O'Connell likes him. He's no threat to your starter. He has started a few games at the NFL level. He's kind of a safe guy. I think he will be back as the number 3. And then they're going to bring in a number 4 undrafted rookie free agent as a roster filler. Camp Arm, and hopefully that guy will have some promise, which we have not seen from other guys they have brought in recently as to be a camp fodder. But your quarterback room, I think next year is going to be McCarthy, hopefully somebody like Daniel Jones, and then Brett Rippon as your number 3. Mm-hmm. Darnold will be elsewhere.
Yes, he will.
And Nick Mullins too.
I believe 100% you are correct. And I do believe that Jones, the deal to come over, part of that included there was probably talks about this next year, this upcoming year, to back up. And we'll see. Or, they may have said no. It was, remember, it's Daniel Jones wanting to come to the KOC school, quarterback school of reclamation. And it may have been, a verbal agreement. Yeah, all right, we're going to sign you to keep you as the backup to J.J. McCarthy and get a full course years, not just a few weeks in. So we'll see. I do believe we're going with J.J. McCarthy. I can't wait. The kid has the it factor. And I've been given grief about that. Dave, where's the it factor on the deep stat sheets? What advanced analytics have it? Well, hey, the kid is, as Norris Fias and Drew said, it's just made different. He wants to win. He comes from winning, and he is a leader. People gravitate towards him. He is constantly supporting everybody, which is great. So, Sam, I wish you luck. Now, I think it's actually going to be Vegas where he goes. Pete Carroll said he would love to have him, I think, or something to that effect. We'll find out.
Former USC player and a USC coach, although they didn't come together at the same time, but they do have that coach similarity, and McCarthy, man, like not only does he want to win, but he has won.
every step he's been.
Lots of guys want to win, but only so many actually are able to do that. And he did it at high school, did it at college, and now he's going to do it at the pro level.
He says so. I believe him.
Just got to put on those 20 pounds he lost over the past few months.
Over 20.
Looking really thin.
Yes, but we'll see. I'm sure he will. That just means pieces.
Yep.
Or something to that effect. God, I wish I was that young again. I could wipe out a whole pizza like it was nothing and not gain a pound. Anyways.
Yeah, or the big round bellies.
Isn't the case.
Yes, no. Big round bellies who have to shove, constantly eat ice cream and other things and just to maintain weight in the regular season.
Peanut butter and honey sandwiches, peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Those were the snacks. 5 full meals a day, heaping pasta plates. I mean, heaping big stuff. I was easily burning 5,000 to 8,000 calories a day and couldn't, it was everything I could do just to maintain weight during the season. Mm-hmm. It was crazy. And I miss those days. Those were so fun. Big old chocolate bar. Nothing. And those days were fun. But not anymore.
Yeah, no, yeah. You just look at a chocolate bar now and you gain 5 pounds.
A pound. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Well, buddy, hey, today was a great show. Long, tons of information that you helped provide, and appreciate it. It has been good to see everybody here, including visitors like Niner Beto, Niner Sickness. He's in his off season as well. So he's getting time to bounce around. And everybody else that joined, Drewster, Narfius, Sarah, you are always appreciated. And everybody else that we may have missed you, but we did see the comments, and we are glad you're here. Any last words, everybody?
Well, Sunday, as much as I love football, Dave, it's always a bit of a depressing watch for me, the NFC Championship games when the Vikings aren't in it. And, we felt so good about the Vikings season. We felt this season was different. We felt the team was stronger than it has been in a long time and that they could hang with the big boys. But now they played so poorly those last two games, Dave, and then you watch how Buffalo plays against Baltimore and how Philly's played and managed things. And it just feels like we got a ways to go before we're at that level. And I find that depressing. Is it just do we need just that one big addition that's going to put us over the top, or is it more than that? It just something I thought about as I was writing this show, and I'll be thinking about it tomorrow as I'm watching those four teams fight to get to the Super Bowl, which is where we want the Vikings to go.
Well, I think it's going to be J.J. McCarthy and then putting together the defense, because we've got a whole bunch of free agents that need to be signed and stuff like that. It's going to be put in, every year's a new year. So, yes. But I think we are off to a great, great start.
As always, optimism from Dave.
Yeah. What do we say?
We say SKOL Vikings, baby, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. And if I missed calling you out by name, my bad. I'm sorry. We'll get it next time. SKOL Vikings! Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcast as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!